Our next speaker is going to tell you more about the Generation Z. These are the guys who want everything, who want to change the world, which is not bad, but they want to do it immediately, right now. They're so demanding, they believe that everything should be happening right now. And Gabe is the editor-in-chief and founder of Gamification Co., which is the leading media in that particular scape. So he will say a lot of that. Gabe, please join us here on the stage. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you on board.
You have the clicker.
Now I started keeping that one.
That's great. Everybody in Turkey always calls me Gabe, which is fun. So feel free to do that for the rest of my time. No, it's amazing. I love the Turkish way, especially if it's wrapped in grape leaves. Okay, so we're going to talk about gamification, and Paul actually was just talking about this idea of switching the way we think about the way marketing and advertising works from like a CPM view to an attention view and an engagement view. And I kind of take a similar perspective on that, because I think if we're being honest, the way that people interact with the world has changed, right? They spend a lot of time during the day doing this, when they probably should be talking to you or watching your stuff or listening. And for most marketers, I think, especially, and for designers, the idea is how do you capture some of people's attention during the day? But most people don't really see this as a crisis, unless you're in the automotive business, in which case this issue has already become a crisis. So let me tell you, I was working with one of the world's largest automakers, and they said we have a real problem, which is that for the first time in history, American teenagers don't want to drive cars anymore. Okay? Now, you've all seen those movies about American teenagers, right? They love driving their cars. It's in every movie. And so it's been part of American culture since the beginning of American culture that driving a car when you're a teenager is a thing. And I'm Canadian, but it's kind of the same. And when I was 16, it was the first thing that I did when I turned 16 was go get my driver's license. And I can't imagine that kids don't want to drive. So I said, well, what's the research? What are they finding? And they found that kids today don't want to drive, this next generation doesn't want to drive, number one, because it's bad for the environment, right? Classic Generation Z. Number two, they don't want to own stuff if they don't have to, right? A sharing economy. But number three, and the single biggest reason why teenage Americans do not want to drive today, is because they've heard the message about not texting and driving, and so they're choosing not to drive. It's true. And actually, it's not texting, it's Instagram. So if you put this into context, if I had told you 5 years ago that a photo sharing app was going to kill the car, what would you have said to me? You said, that's crazy, Gabe. There's no possible way. That's not possible. But in fact, that's exactly what's happening. And it's happening because of the power of games. Games and game-like experiences change the way people think, they change the way people behave, and they have serious implications for product developers, marketers, strategists across the economy. There's a concept called gamification, which some of you may have heard of, which is all about this idea. And it's about engaging users using the power of games, behavioral economics, and loyalty programs to engage them in particular experiences. While game-like experiences, like Instagram, which is not a game, but kind of like a game, is over here trying to eat up all the time of your consumer, you can use gamification to level the playing field. It's like your toolkit, your skill set. Now, just as brief background, I'm Gabe, or Gabe in English, Zichermann. I've written a bunch of books about gamification. The latest is called Gamification by Design. You can check it out there. Okay, so why are games so powerful? What's the reason why they're so powerful? Why are so many people addicted to Candy Crush or World of Warcraft or Angry Birds or whatever it is that you're playing? The reason is in our brain, okay? Every time you challenge yourself to something in your mind, anything at all, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, and then you achieve that thing, your brain secretes a little bit of this neurotransmitter called dopamine, okay? And dopamine feels really good. Feels good. So when I say, I'm going to run a mile in 10 minutes, which I cannot do to save my life, okay? But if I said that, and then I do that thing, after I do that, in my brain, I feel really good. That sense of achievement, okay? In a game, in a video game, That happens hundreds of times per hour because a game is nothing but a series of repeating challenge, achievement, dopamine release loops over and over and over again. Do you guys remember that game Angry Birds? Some of you may still be playing it. Okay, so think about it for 1 second because it's very clear in Angry Birds. Yeah. Yeah. Okay? It's this behavior over and over and over again. So it's happening over and over and over again. And if you grow up in an environment where this is your main form of media consumption, or you do this over a long period of time, it rewires your brain. And the effect of that is everything else is too slow and too boring because you don't get all the dopamine that you're used to getting in your games. And that's the central challenge of designing for this particular generation. So some companies have started to respond. One example is Domino's Pizza from the US. So Domino's has made this app called Domino's Pizza Hero. And in Domino's Pizza Hero, you play a pizza maker, okay? You make a pizza in the game. You put the dough and the cheese and the sauce, and then you move your finger and it's baked at your local Domino's and delivered to you in real life from inside the game. Domino's makes $1 million in incremental revenue per week in the United States from this game. And if you are very good at making pizzas in Domino's Pizza Hero, the company will invite you to apply for a job right from inside the game. So just consider, for Generation Z, which is incredibly skeptical about every corporate marketing message, these kids do not believe a single thing that they are being told from any corporation or any government or anybody. They don't believe anything. The only thing they believe is things that they do with their own hands and things that their friends tell them. This app changes the game for how we message a company's story. Because instead of telling you about how great Domino's Pizza is, we let you make one with your own hands and experience that yourself. Another example comes from Autodesk making 3D modeling software. They took that game, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which some of you might have played, and applied it to the challenge of getting people to learn how to do 3D modeling. So instead of just giving you a manual for the software and saying, learn how to do the 3D modeling yourself, they made a little game where they said, oh, there's been a crime. You have to travel to Paris to unlock the secret. Okay, great. Now you're in Paris. To get this clue, you've got to make a 3D model. That's awesome. You did it. Okay, the next clue's in Barcelona. Let's go there. Now bounce the model. Awesome. Now let's go to London. Now put the model against the wall, set it on fire, drop it in water, and oh, the next thing you know, the person's learned how to do the basics of 3D modeling. And if you can convince people that your software can help them accomplish the thing they want to accomplish, or that your product can help them accomplish what they want to accomplish, even if it's hard, you can sell a lot more product. So in the case of Autodesk, this little game experience increased revenue by 17%. Now, at the core are 3 ideas: feedback, friends, and fun. The more an experience has these 3 things in it, feedback tells you how you're doing, friends are your social graph, and fun is a little different for everybody, but we'll just go with that for a second. The more something has the 3 Fs, the more Generation Z is going to be interested in it, and the better you are at getting people's engagement. Now, some of you may know this application called Duolingo, which is a great case study in this. It's a language learning online tool that uses the principles of gamification to engage people to play. Duolingo's been out for less than 3 years. In 3 years, 200 million people have gone through the process of learning a new language with Duolingo. That's more than the whole language learning industry's entire history of total students put together through all of time. Right? You guys probably have at some point picked up a Rosetta Stone or some other piece of language learning software. And the key in Duolingo is that it makes the process of learning a new language fun and social and makes you feel like you're moving forward all the time. But also, if you don't move forward, as you can see in this image, it says, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Come back. Let's do something. Let's do something every day. And that daily routine is a core part of the way that gamification works. On the corporate side, we also have great examples of doing this in the workplace. And especially when you think about how you engage this next generation, millennials or the Zs, in the workplace, many issues come up that gamification can be helpful for. And this example comes from Delta Airlines in the US. So Delta, a few years ago, decided that it needed to bring its call centers back to the US. So before they had them in the Philippines and India, and they said, we want to bring them back to the US because American workers are more efficient and we need less calls, so let's bring it back. And they decided, though, when they're hiring 10,000 people, they had to find a fast way of training everybody on important things like geography, because they're an airline, so people have to know geography. And Americans are not very good at geography, so this was a bit of a problem. But also how to use the systems and so on. So Delta said, okay, well, we're going to build a new thing called Ready, Set, Jet. And Ready, Set, Jet is a gamified way of learning the Delta way. Okay, so listen to this, you guys. In the first year of the Ready, Set, Jet game being available at Delta, Delta employees played 4 years worth of training in the first year. Now, have you ever done corporate training before in your job? Any of you been to a corporate training? I don't know what it's like in Turkey, but let me describe corporate training in the US for you. This is what it would be like. Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to corporate training. This is going to be really exciting. We're going to learn about the policies of the company for the next 3 days, right? Nobody voluntarily does corporate training. That has literally never happened in the history of America, okay? Like, no one's ever said, I really want to do more. Delta employees did 4 years worth of training in 1 year. And let me tell you the funniest part about it. They did it in their spare time, because this game was not available to you during working hours. So the game was so fun and so interesting that people did 4 years worth of training in 1 year. It's an amazing story. And at the very heart of it, the very simple part of it, is Delta said, instead of doing training the old way, let's make something that's as fun as Candy Crush. Not the same as Candy Crush, which is very important, because I promise you that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make with gamification. They think, oh, Candy Crush is really cool, let's gamify something by making it look like Candy Crush. But nobody's going to play your shitty clone of Candy Crush, I promise you, because Candy Crush is basically free, right? So there's no point in doing something that's exactly like a games company, but the idea is to take lessons from them. And one of the most important lessons from game design is the idea that people should be able to fail cheaply. Failure is very expensive in the real world. Failure is very expensive if you're a business manager or a customer or a student, right? Or a parent. So one of the ideas in games is that we let people fail over and over and over again. And I put up the Angry Birds example because I think it's very clear. But also, like in some other spheres, like in financial services, so this is a project that I worked on where we wanted to come up with a way for people to think about the future of their finance in a way that wasn't like, you're failing at saving money, you haven't saved enough money, you're a failure, you're going to retire with not enough money, you're going to be dependent on the government to make up the rest of your money, you're going to be eating crackers for the rest of your life. You know, this kind of the way the financial services industry loves to market with fear. One of the things that we have to do for this generation is turn fear-based marketing inside out. Instead of fear-oriented, we need to change people's behavior and create action. So one of the things that we worked on was this idea of like, can you visualize your financial future in a positive, accretive way? Can you use imagery to think about what it is that you want to accomplish instead of feeling like a failure? Now, I want to also just share with you one example, something that I think is sort of fun for fun's sake, and this came from the Sochi Olympic marketing plan from this last year. And sometimes the concept behind gamification is really to tell a story, but to do that in a fun, forward way. So as part of the Sochi marketing, Visa and the Olympic Committee built this new version of a ticketing machine for the subway. So in the Moscow subway, instead of walking up to the machine and putting in your 1 ruble and getting ticket, you walk to machine, do 15 squats, you get free ticket, yes? Okay? Is good. Now, here's the thing. Most people, when they hear this example of this story, they think to themselves, oh, shit. Can you imagine this in the Taksim station at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? You'd want to kill everybody waiting there doing their squats instead of putting their money in the machine and getting their tickets. This wouldn't work in a real-world large city, and that's the point here. This doesn't replace the ticket vending machines in Moscow. This tells the story of why physical fitness is important and can be fun, not as a complete replacement for the entire system. So one of the best things about this is understanding the future. Let me, and just to give you a little bit of a perspective about the iceberg of gamification in our future, if you go to the top apps list in many categories on the App Store, you will have a great deal of difficulty finding many apps that don't include gamification anymore. and especially in the education sector, where it has become an established notion that in order to teach kids, the best way to teach kids is to teach them through game-based concepts. Now, that's not an established notion in schools, right? Because you'll be hard-pressed to find a school that uses game-based training. It is, however, an established notion for parents who buy tens of millions of these apps for their children, buying almost all of them using gamification. So just consider, in all the examples that I told you today, all the ways that we've talked about the future of engagement, what this next generation looks like, that not only plays video games for entertainment and for fun, but also grows up learning about the world through the prism of video games. What are their brains like? What are their expectations? What is it that they think they should be getting from you at all times? And I'm going to answer that question for you right now, because it's not an abstract question. The answer is feedback, friends, and fun. And the lesson for you, and the most important thing that I want you to take away, everything that Generation Z wants from you, all that feedback, friends, and fun, all that engagement, all that positive dopamine that they're looking for, old people want that too. They want it too. They love dopamine. My mom loves dopamine. She's playing Candy Crush right now. I promise you, she's playing it right now. Right now, she's playing it at home. She loves dopamine just as much as my 1-year-old nephew does. I promise. She doesn't know to ask for it. She doesn't expect it to be built into everything. But by the time my nephew comes of age, we will absolutely positively have to bring these game concepts to every corner of the economy. And those of you who get ready for that now promise to capture the best of today's market and future consumers. Thank you.